Hi there and welcome to my studio. My name is Gideon, also known as Gideon Slide, and I am a creatively fit coach. Come join me in my studio as we play and have fun at the canvas and in our art journals. What are you waiting for? Here we go. Hi everybody and welcome to this afternoon session. Let me just get comfortable here behind my desk. So today I thought of playing with some techniques to create more collage papers and collage elements to play with in the future. The whole idea is that most of the stash that you use in your journal is self-created, so that will give you a unique look in your journal that is not easily replicated, and it is not all just bought in store. So one of my inspiration photos from Bali is not the best example, but we're going to be doing more than one, of the Heaven's Gate. This is just one of the first ones that I took a photograph of, and I do like sort of the black and white negative and positive space in this photograph, because what I would like to do with this is to do a mono print, and luckily I've got two to play with, a smaller one and a bigger one. So in order to do a transfer mono print of a photograph on your Gelli plate, it is a good idea to have a very high contrast between light and dark. So we will try that later in this episode, but I thought for this page in my journal I'm going to roll with this whole theme of black and white and all the 50 shades of grey in between. So everything that I've placed around me has a black and white theme. I've created these papers before. I do always say that black and white is fine, but you can always add a metallic, a gold or a bronze or a silver to that to just add some green, you know. So for today's demonstration, after carefully going through some of the previous things I've done, I want to show you something that can be inspiring, and we can create some collage elements, seeing how we can stain different kinds of papers. So I've got some tissue paper ready, I've got some of my packaging material paper ready, and I also drew a little book out of my library that has aged quite a lot, and I quite like how the pages has yellowed. I will definitely be using most of this book in a creative process, collaging going forward. So find a book that you are happy to let go, that you don't mind tearing the pages out of the book and creating some collage elements with. You can always go to a thrift store or a book exchange or any of those antique kind of stores that has old books that's not expensive. You can sometimes I just sell for very little amount of money, or you can exchange it or whatever. It's just the idea of these old yellow pages with some text on it that you can enhance and create a beautiful collage element with. So what you can also use these pages for is to apply glue to your collage elements, and then you rub it over these pages and the glue dries on it, and it creates an interesting texture. So we're going to be playing. I've already tore some pages out of my book, and I wanted to begin by showing you how you can create this beautiful stain just using ordinary instant coffee. So I already washed this page with a bit of coffee, so I thought this might be a nice way to begin our process and just play with some of the things that we have around the house. If you have watercolor, you can obviously also use watercolor because it will give you that nice translucency. The idea is not necessarily to cover everything up on the underneath, and the older the paper is, the more porous it will be. So you can just then set these aside. I literally used a teaspoon of coffee in like a shooted glass or so full of warm water and dissolved it so that it has a nice concentration, which you can always dilute it with a bit of clean water as well. So then I will just put this aside to dry. So let me do that. I think I'm gonna do a few pages with the coffee. Let me set these pages aside, and you can then just splatter, creating some texture. And then just maybe connect some of the spots to make it look like a coffee spill on the page. How hard can that be, right? I'm just using a sword brush here. It just gives me that uncontrolled kind of drip texture easily because of the brush structure. I like that vibe there. So the areas where there's a lot of coffee will dry darker than the areas where there's little. So you can also use a strong brew tea to stain your paper with. So that's always a lot of fun. And I obviously had to make myself a cup of coffee because I just knew the smell of fresh coffee is going to make me thirsty. Yum! Let's set these pages aside to dry. Right. So coming back to this page that is already dry with my coffee stain on it, I'm going to come back to the coffee with another paper of mine. I wanted to play with various underground coverings here in paint. So I've got a Chinese white, which is the same as mixing white or zinc white, so it's a bit of a translucent white. I've got some white gesso here that will give me a matte opaque finish. I have a bit of student grade Payne's grey over here. Payne's grey as a rule is a bit translucent. I've got some pearl white, which is a metallic white. You can also mix this with any color to create a metallic finish to your paint. If you don't want to buy a whole kit of metallic paint, this is the white you need to create a metallic version of any color. I've got ivory black here that has a sheen finish, and I've got some inks as well. I've got black and white ink over here of acrylic ink. I've got my own made spray little bottle here, and I've mixed some black ink in here. I've added some Payne's grey and a bit of black. So I just wanted to create a stain that I can spray on because it gives me another finish to play with. I have some gold here as well because I always do like a bit of a metallic. And then I have a piece of paper here that I just clean my tools on, and I already tested my little spray on here. It's good to have a piece of paper on the side ready where you can either clean a brush or a brayer or something on there, and eventually working with the color palette of your session, this can become a very beautiful collage element all on its own without even thinking about it. Okay, so another thing that I think you could need for today's session is either a palette knife spatula like this. This is just a plastic version, so it doesn't have to break the bank. Or you can just use an old credit card that you no longer use to just scrape some paint on. So I'm keeping it very simple. It's all about experimenting and playing and having fun. And the idea with this is not to cover everything up, but have some words or phrases or sentence structures remain on the page, so that later when you use it as a collage element, then it is interesting to see some of the text underneath. Okay, so I thought, let me start with a bit of this pearl white so you can have a better look at it. I'm just going to use my tools on the side. I'm going to use this rub off extra page here on the side as my palette as well. So there's a little bit of pearl white. This is just pearl white from Iris. You can just see whichever brands is available at your art supply store near you. And then I'm just going to use this palette knife scraper, and I'm just going to pick up the paint and just form a nice bead of paint on my palette knife. And then I'm just going to scrape it over the words like that, and you will see that the pearl white is nice and see-through depending on how thick you apply it. So areas that are thicker will have more of a reflective property to it, and areas that are thinner will be a little bit more translucent. So that already is a very interesting background paper that you can play with in your collage. So I'm going to set this aside and let's try another one. So I've got all these pages torn out, so I am ready to go, so that we can be creative in our studio. Let's add a bit more. Let's play. Let's see what. No, wait. Too excited. Let's finish this one page with one thing first, and then we can add something else. But don't be scared to experiment. The idea is to experiment and see what happens, and whatever you get out of the experimentation is part of the fun. Like that. Okay, I'm going to put this aside here next to me. I want to add something now. Might as well finish this paint on my palette before I add another bit. I'm thinking I'm going to add some of my white geisha. Now geisha is very opaque and matte, so I'm going to get some out of my little bottle here. Let's see what happens if we combine some matte geisha over that page. We're going to have a contrast there between matte and shiny. We'll come back to it when it's dry, then we'll see. Okay. let's do some staining first. I'm going to use my homemade spray. And let's just see what it does. That looks fun. I like the splatter effect. Let's come in with a wet brush and just blend some of these areas. It might look like mold or something old worldly. Now while that is there, sometimes it's good to have areas dry first, sometimes we're just going to experiment and see what happens. This is an older geisha of mine, so it's not new, so it might have its own little mood all on its own. Let's do another one. So for this one I'm going to jump straight to my black acrylic ink, and I'm just going to spread some over there. Come in with a brush and just connect some of these areas. Not quite like that. I'm going to leave it just like it is and allow that ink to dry. As you can see, creating pages is a quick process. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. So when you start a creative session like this, be ready with all your materials so that you don't have to interrupt your flow the whole time, thinking what you're going to do next, so that things are basically at arm's length so you can grab it in the moment as you are inspired. This is just a white acrylic drawing ink. And see where the session takes you. I think I've got too much white here on my extra page, so I'm just going to spread this out here as well and allow it to dry, because you can already see something interesting happening here. It's almost looking like a face. These things just happen. So you know you're in your right brain when you start to see shapes and images in your negative spaces and the things you create. It's just a sign that you are in a creative mode. I'm sure you've all played this game before, where you lie on the grass at a picnic and you stare up at the clouds and you try to see shapes in the clouds, and you share that with everyone. What are you seeing? A little rabbit or whatever. So I'm going to use a Payne's Grey now and scrape that over the page. Payne's Grey is usually see-through. As you can see, text underneath is not completely covered up. Some areas are darker, some areas are more see-through. And then here on my spreading page, I'm just rubbing it through to add more texture there as well. Let's put this aside. I think I'm going to need some more book pages, so let's get some more out. I saw something here, there was a map or something. Let me see what I'm able to pull out. I think it's a bit later in the book. No? I'm sure I saw something. Here we go. Here. Here's a knife. Yes, that could be beautiful to play with. See, a little map could become a cute little element. So let's play. I've got some Delusions shimmer spray here in a blue. I thought let's give it a spritz. I know we are playing with black and white, but you know, I thought a bit of blue on that little map might be interesting. I'm going to allow that to dry and come back to it. But let's get a few more pages out of our book and let's try a bit of gold. Can never have too much gold, can you? Okay, let's try with a credit card, so that if that's what you're using, you can see what effects you can create. See, that will be completely different to the spatula. Just love that glimmer. So we're going to add more texture and elements to these pages once they are dry. Let me just put this down. And let's do another one. So when you're busy creating pages like this, you can work with different colors as well, because you can always catalog them and put them together in a little pouch. I did here with my stencils. I keep them in a pouch like this, so you can keep all your papers together, neatly organized in a pouch like that, so that you can pull a particular color that you are working with in your journal. Now I wanted to try some of this black. A little bit of black. I'm going to use my card again and just wipe that gold off. Let's keep the black on. I love that unplanned moments on the paper. Let's do another one. If it's, let's see what happens. It's nice and wet still. If you print another page on it and you pull it off, I didn't quite do what I thought it would, but it's not the end. Of course, you can always add more. So let's see. Just playful. We're going to let that dry and maybe we'll throw some white ink on there or something. Okay, I feel I've got enough papers done for today with those techniques to play with in our journal. So let's switch to the next technique I wanted to show you guys, and that will be staining some napkins with some of these colors so that we can create another texture to play with. So I already prepared some of my tissue paper. Just move some of these things out of the way because I don't want these elements to stain now. Go, you guys can see. Okay, so this is just an ordinary napkin that I disassembled in all its 3 different stages, or 3 different layers rather, and I've placed it on a sheet of wax paper so that when I stain this with the inks, it can flow and I have something stronger to pick it up with, because once the tissue paper is wet with water and ink, it is very fragile, it will tear. So make sure that you've got something to pick it up with, and then allow it to dry completely afterwards. Because it's wax, it will be able to pull off. I just noticed now the gold is on top, not at the bottom. So there we go. So I think I'll start with just plain water. It's just a bottle I've recycled, and just get the tissue paper nice and wet, because that will help elements to flow a bit. I'm going to come back to my sword brush and some of my coffee that I have here, and I'm just going to drip this on my tissue paper randomly. The coffee stains give the paper an old world feel, especially if you work on white paper. That's definitely a way to, if the book that you got has only got white pages in it, but it's, you know, the right price or the right book, then you can stain the pages with a wash of coffee or tea, and that will also make it look old. I am going to, let's add some of this grey black spray of my own. And obviously the closer you go, the more intense it will be, and you might get some splatter. So you can see the water is going to dilute all of this. I'm going to come in with a pure black ink as well, and just dab some, because this is potent stuff. Dab some here and there, and we will allow that to spread out. And I think I'm going to use some of this Distress Delusion Shimmer Spray, the Vanilla Custard. I think it's going to complement the overall page. It's got a nice shimmer to it. And let's add a little bit of white as well for some contrast. We're going to allow this to dry, and we'll see what it does once it's dry. I'm going to put this aside and get another one. So this is one of the backing napkins of the original, so I thought let's play with this as well. Where is my water bottle? Just add it. Oh, here it is. Let's begin with a bit of water. I thought for this one, let's begin with some white. Let that spread out a bit. I've got some diluted black here. This is just my coffee spray again, my coffee solution. Now you can see the coffee nicely on the white napkin. I'm going to switch to this diluted black paint. It should hold its form a little bit better than ink, because it's a bit thicker, but it will also spread out. So whatever you do, you're just experimenting. You are not solving world hunger. You are just playing and seeing what happens, experimenting, and in so doing, you are allowing yourself to step out of your left brain, which wants to analyze and understand everything, and you switch over to your right brain, which is more accepting. It loves all of your senses, works through your right brain. It loves textures and colors and symbols and all of these abstract aspects of our psyche. Likes to play with these things because it's beautiful and interesting and stimulating. Let's add more water in some areas and allow this to just spread out a bit more. I think that's wet enough, so let's go for a last one. What shall we do here? I think this is repeats a bit more. I'm gonna use this self-mixed spray and just really try and stain this one a bit more black. So these little patterns that form because of the wax paper underneath the tissue paper is going to make patterns that is very interesting. So let's add some black ink to this as well to make it even stronger. Just want droplets to fall here and there, and then some parts are more intense, some parts are less intense, so you have a variety. And I'm gonna mix some gold here on the side on my mixing scrap paper. And I think I'm just gonna use the sword brush of mine again, just get most of the black off and just dilute it a bit so that we can splatter. That looks nice. You see, some bit of bling always just uplifts a page, especially if you work in monochromatic color scales. Then a bit of bling helps to just elevate things to another level. And I'm going to allow this to dry as well. So I've dried some of these papers so that we can continue to play on them. This is just one of the tissue papers, and I wanted to just show you when it's dry, it completely lifts off the wax paper. But now you've stained some tissue paper with some beautiful inks that can provide an amazing background collage. So I'm just going to put that aside. So I wanted to just flip through these old pages that we've stained and we've created some background textures with. So I've washed these with the remaining coffee so they are even darker, can you see, than the original. So that gives us a beautiful neutral yellow ochreish coffee kind of background. It warms up the black even, so that is really nice. This is another one, so some contrasts. I just did the one corner. This one was the Payne's Grey, added a bit of the coffee at the top so you get some different tones and hues and tints. This is a very interesting combination between the pearl white and the gesso. So you can see the gesso is matte and then the pearl white is very reflective with the mica particles and the words that shimmer through. So I'm going to try and do my mono print of the Heaven's Gate on this piece of paper. So we will put that one over there. This one is also interesting with the initial spray and then some of the matte gesso on top of that. This one was just the pearl white. Here's a bit of gold and a bit of that Payne's Grey that was still on the scraper. So you can see we are creating interesting and beautiful backgrounds and collage elements to play with. But now that we've stained these, this turned out quite cool as well. We need to take it to another level as well. So I thought I would use one of these two as my mono print of Heaven's Gate, because I think that will fit nicely on that page. I'm going to do it with this original, but I'll showcase that for you in a second. So I'm going to put these two aside with that mono print because I want to play a little bit more with these papers. So I've got all my stencils out here, so let's create something more interesting with this. So this is a script stencil that I got from one of the stores. So I thought I'm going to use it in a vertical way like this, because this in a way then reads more like Asian script. It's just a vibe I want to create, so it doesn't have to be absolutely accurate. So I'm turning it upside down and I'm turning it vertical onto this page, and I thought of playing with my new makeup sponges that I got from a local store around me. I normally just use those triangular ones in larger packs, but they didn't have, so I saw these and they work just as nice. So let me show you how you can use these sponges, if I can get it out, to apply paint to the surface over here and do a nice technique. So I'm going to just put my stencils aside, we'll work through them as we go, and my little scrap paper on the side here. I hope you guys can see nicely. Let me just put it in the center. So these of course you can just wash, it's just latex, so they're nice and soft. Just get a spatula, take out some, what is this? Chinese white now. I want titanium white. Oh, the girls are communicating with each other. Let me just grab my titanium white over here, because I want a nice strong white. And I'm just going to add some to my page over here. So if you want to scrape this through on your palette, on your paper with your little stencil, I suggest you add some body mixture to your palette because otherwise it will just smear. So we're going to use our little sponge, Allah, to dab the paint in here. I'm just going to secure that. So I think that's going to be interesting. So I'm not making my sponge too wet so that I can have almost a dry brush application of the paint here. Are we ready? Let's lift this up. That's so cool. So you can see we created a whole new collage element on these papers. So it's the layers that add the interest. So now you can either use just an element of it, or you tear a whole piece out, or you use the page as it is. So that is fun. Let's continue. I'm going to put that one aside. I quite like what the stencil is doing, so let's grab another dark one while we have some white paint out. Here's two more. Let's turn it like that. The text doesn't have to be the right side up. Remember, there's no rules. So let's do another one. I quite like these sponges. They're nice and firm, and they are applying the paint in a nice even finish. Lift that away. Dum, dum, dum. That looks really cool. Let's do this one. I wonder the paint is probably, yeah, the paint is all ready to dry on underneath to do a positive print, so I will have to do it like that again. But let's get some gold going on here. Let's see how that will work out. Some gold. I'm just gonna use the same brush, the same sponge here. Let's see what we get here. Awesome. And of course you can add even more elements to that. This is just a lot of fun. So I'm going to switch stencils now. Let's take one of these light pages and let's see how it will look if we do a little dark leaf on it. Just going to clean my little brush here a little bit on my paper by dabbing most of the paint off. And I think let's get some Payne's grey on here. And let's just work some paint into the surface of this little sponge so that we can, I'm just going to hold firmly onto my little leaf and just press that in. That's so cute. Let's do another one here. So your little dabber mustn't be too wet, otherwise it will just squirt the paint out. Awesome. Let's try one more. I like that. It's literally stuck to my finger. So you're going to allow this to dry and maybe come over with a black, then have another dimension, another depth of color on there. That is a lot of fun. So let's let this dry. I'm going to put this stencil away and let's skip to the next one. Let's see what we have here. Let's do some of these coffee stain pages. And let's do one of these fleur-de-lis in the same way. We can maybe start a little bit off the page with that, and I'm going to finish this Payne's grey paint. Oh, that looks really cool. Let's do one here. Love that. Let's repeat this one here, almost like wallpaper. I like that. That's really cool. You can see how cute that can be on your collage. Now let's do one with some black. So I'm going to add a bit of black here to my Payne's grey. Let's get some black on our little pad here and just work it out a little bit. So let's try that again in the off-page placement. Just work that through. Oh, that's really cool. Let's do one here. And this fleur-de-lis design is sort of reminiscent for me in design principle, sort of the elaborate stonework that I saw in Bali. Just reminds me of that detail. Oh, that's so cute. I love that. You see, you would never know unless you tried and played and combined things. So now, with each little creative session that you have in your studio, you are stimulating your right brain thinking, you are experimenting, you are playing, just like my doggies in the background, and just allowing that playful attitude and experimental open-mindedness allows you to discover new things and to create things with such beauty that you never thought would be possible. So, you know, stencils really open up a whole new world in creating interesting collage elements. Let's do one with some white paint. I'm gonna switch to another little dabber because I want a pure white, but let's get another one out. This can of course be washed and reused, so that's really nice. I'm gonna use this one with some of this leftover white paint. And I'm going to place it off center. Let's do a half. Let's do half off page like that. And see how that comes out. This might not have the same contrast, but it might be interesting. Like, I'm open to experiment and to try something new. Now, the black is not completely dry on my stencil, so the colors are mixing, so I'm having a bit of a gray. That's fun and unexpected. Grey is definitely an important color as well. It's a value between white and black. If I'm moving everything around here, let's lift that up. That's really cool. I like that. Let's complete the repeat of the pattern down here. Then we have a nice wallpaper effect here. And sometimes you might just want to tear that little element out. You might not use the whole page. So that's fun. Let's switch to another stencil. Let's see what we can create with this organic leaf design. And I'm going to work on this gold page. And I think it might be interesting. I've got some black left here, switching back to my black makeup sponge. Let's see what we get when we blend this out in a way. So I'm not refreshing my paint as I go down the page. It's creating just a ghost see-through effect, and it gets a little bit stronger on my way to the top. Let's see. Ooh, that's cool. You see, anything's possible by just playing a little bit. Let's do another one. Let's add some Payne's Grey to this black, why not? Seeing that our theme is black and white. And I'm going to do the same again. So there's more paint on the one half of the thing, of the sponge. So there's more of a pure color at the top. And as you work your way down, the color gets more and more transparent. So cool. It can be an animal print as well. Some cheetah spots. Exciting. Here's a pearl white page. let's put some black on there. But shall we try another stencil? I've got this little diamond shaped one. Some diamond shapes. Let's finish this black and Payne's grey over this pearl white. Let's see how that works. And you don't even have to complete the entire stencil. You can just work in sections. That's interesting. As another elemental layer, you can play with that. I think I'm going to try some of that on here as well. Got some more black paint here. Could be interesting. This one I'm definitely just going to leave as it is. I'm not going to add anything to that. I think that's interestingly enough. So here I have a whole stash of papers that I've added some stenciling to create some visual interest. This piece has been lying here all along, and it's been getting little drips and drabs of other elements that I've been playing with, so it adds to the interest of that. But now I want to play with this big stencil of mine, and I want to sort of see what we can create with this stencil. And I think I'm going to put some gold on there again, because I think that will stand out the most on this paper. I'm just going to dry this one on the side here so that there is no more paint coming off. That should be fine. Let's go for gold. So I'm just going to rub some of that off. Working the paint into the stencil design. That's really cool. You see, now something boring in the background is becoming something interesting in the foreground. Now this stencil was designed so that you can complete the repeat. So let me add a bit of gold here, and we can see how a repeat stencil works. Sponge. I must say I like the flat aspect of the previous sponge a little bit more. There we go, you see, and then that completes that leaf design. That is really cool. Now you can let this dry and then you can work with another leaf design over it, maybe with another color, maybe white or black or something like that. So that could be a lot of fun. So in general, I want you just to see what you have in your studio, what stencils have you got, what little instruments and tools you've got, or what affordable tools you can add to your studio in order to play and experiment and have a little bit of fun. So on a low budget, I added these for like 50 Rand, and I think there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different makeup applications here. So if you wash this, you can reuse them. Little cheap spray bottles that you can create sprays with out of your own ink or paint materials. Really, the list is endless. I'm just confirming again that creating interesting collage elements does not have to be an expensive trip to the art store. All of these little exercises and demonstrations that I'm doing is there to illustrate to you that creativity and practicing a creative practice is so helpful for your mind, for your body and your soul, and it can be a lot of fun if you just allow yourself to play and have a bit of fun with no expectations, and then see where that takes you. So hopefully this is a way to spark your creative right brain and to get you guys moving and to try something new, something different, even something that you thought you could not do or that you need very specific tools for that could be expensive. So hopefully I'm showing you that that does not have to be the case. Okay, so I'm going to allow all of this to dry, and then we'll see how we're going to bring all of these elements back to the journal.